Yeah, so there's three things really she's looking for. The criteria used to pick sites for upgrade. That's a question for there's such a varying number of reasons. I suppose maybe she's trying to figure out, if we're deciding between 2024 and 2027, how are we deciding which ones come first? Possibly. And then the metrics that you were using to measure the success of the disinfection program, I don't know how they measure the success. Again, that's for or IDD.
Yeah.
So the criteria used is for asset planning, and they probably come back with some standard response because it's a very general question, or a very general answer for that question, And then the number of supplies that were removed or added since 2018 should be on the actual spreadsheet anyway. So, so I'll stop presenting this here now. So do you want to, you probably best to go through, you show your, show the Excel or whatever, if you want to share it.
Yeah. Give me a second.
Yeah. It's just kind of make a start on it really, because rather than kind of like last minute, and we might pick an end date, by which we have to have the information in so that you have the 2 weeks to compile it rather than trying to get it last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did we get any response back from her actually?
She just responded yesterday. Just confirmed that she received the file. Yeah.
Okay, so she probably has that included in the actual response that those requests.
Can you see my screen now, Deidre?
I can. If you could make it a tiny bit bigger, actually.
Yeah, let me move to my my monitor, which is bigger. Can you see bigger, Deidre?
I can see your emails now, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry. Let I stop sharing and share again. Yeah.
And it might be worth pulling up her email as well, maybe before we look at this, just to see that she specifically asked for those particular queries, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Sorry now.
No problem. Yeah. Can you see the Excel file, Deidre?
I can see the Excel file, yeah.
Yeah. Is it big enough?
I can make it a tiny bit bigger, actually.
Yeah.
It's just my screen I'm only looking off a laptop here, so it's not great. I probably should really get a bigger screen.
Yeah, I have a very, very big screen at home now. This is 27-inch monitor.
Have you?
Yeah,
right.
I just bought last week.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I can just about make that out. But if you don't mind, just going just to her request, and we just see, because that's timely really that it came in yesterday.
Yeah. So, total number of supplies removed and added for the file since the baseline in 2018.
Sorry, I'm not seeing it on the screen now.
Oh.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm seeing the
Excel file.
Well, I'm actually seeing the email that you forwarded on to me from the presentation.
Yeah.
The share can be a bit funny on this, can't it? I'm not quite sure. How it works.
So can you see the BH file now?
That's the Excel file that I'm on now. I'm seeing now.
It's weird.
When you actually go down and select at the bottom of the screen, I can see what you're about to select. So maybe if you went down and selected the email.
Yeah.
Might work. That's the email on the presentation now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it flashed onto it there for a second. It was more the email that came in from her yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it? I didn't see this at all now. Files increased by 2 in Q2 now stands at 91 supplies. Okay, so we've got 91 supplies. 5 supplies, 2 high risks have been added, and 3 supplies, 1 high risk removed since the last update. So we added 5 last time, was it? Yeah, to bring it up to 91. I know there are 22 supplies categorized as high risk. Okay. Chris, to address the following issues in Q2. So confirm that where supplies have been identified as high risk due to metal failures, that an investigative metals monitoring program is put in place for each supply, that the HC is consulted with via the INR process, and that appropriate advice provided to consumers where issues are identified. Each local authority, that's something that the the compliance team should be able to confirm, because each local authority should be adding, for any of the high risk supplies, they should be adding on the copper, nickel, and lead monitoring requirement to their regulators, to their check samples, basically. But logging it in as operational. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they take, so that it doesn't get mixed up with the regulatory sample. So when they're taking their check samples for each supply, they add on the copper, nickel, and lead, but they log it into their system as operational. And what she's saying is, like, first of all, are they doing that? And secondly, if they do get an iron non-compliance, are they consulting with the HSE? Because for some of them, letters would need to be issued.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the question: are letters issued? So that's that piece anyway.
Sorry, Deborah, can I ask a question? So, for example, if BH failed on December, but before December they have the mental failure, but from December until now they don't have any mental failure. So it will be the high risk or the low risk supplies?
If there's a metal failure at any stage, it's considered high risk.
Okay. As long as the metal failure before or after the day we have the BH failure.
Well, normally, like, I suppose what happens is, like, we've got let me see now, sorry. Let me think now for a second. What way did we do this? Because the high risk supplies, once they're identified, maybe confirmed the supplies that have been identified due to when they're considered to be high risk, I'm just trying to think now, is it all supplies? I'm trying to remember back now, is it all supplies that if they're high risk and we're monitoring for copper, nickel, and lead, we already know they're high risk, so any further monitoring is not really relevant, actually.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to remember back what we used to do, or at what stage. I'd have to really go way back to look at what instructions we had given the local authorities. I can't remember if it was all, because it doesn't make sense that, like, if it's considered to be high risk, then any further monitoring for copper, nickel, and lead is irrelevant, because we've already identified it as high risk. You know what I mean? We've identified the supply as high risk. But I can't remember. I think it was for all supplies that were on the PH file that the monitoring for copper, nickel, and lead was to be undertaken as part of the check monitoring. And if a copper, nickel, or lead exceedance was recorded, that we would go down the route then of, consulting with the HSE, and that would be considered to be high risk. So you could have supplies that are on low risk. There's monitoring being undertaken for copper, nickel, and lead. But if there's any metals detected in any of that sampling, it would then be escalated to high risk.
Yeah.
So I think, from my memory, I'd have to double check that now, but from my memory, it was all supplies on the PH file were to be monitored for copper, nickel, and lead. Mm-hmm. And if you detect the copper and nickel and lead, then it has escalated. It should be all low risk supplies, not all supplies. So all low risk supplies, right?
Yeah, for
because
example,
if they're high risk, we've already identified that there is a risk of metals, being detected for customers on that supply. But for all the low risks, if there's copper, nickel, and lead added to the check samples, and if if that's all compliant, that's fine, it stays low risk. But if there's a copper, nickel or lead exceedance detected, then that has to be escalated to a high risk supply. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because we have some supply here. For example, this one, the pH failure day is the July of 2022, but the failure of the metal is before that, and until now we don't have any metal failure. But it's still
You see, the thing is, like, once it's classified as high risk, we don't like, once, if there's just one copper, nickel or lead exceedance detected, it's considered to be high risk. But there is a value, all right, from what you're saying there. There is a value in continuing to monitor the higher risks, because you could, in theory, make a case that there hasn't been any non-compliances since that one in whatever date it was. Like, as you said, there's one there, 2022, I think. The last compliance is 2022. Now, what supply is that? Again, it depends on the size. Like, because if that's depends on the size of the supply. So it might only have two audit samples taken, in the year. So and like, it's nickel and lead. They sound like they're okay. So nickel and lead would be private site specific. It indicates there's an issue. As you know, for the lead files, it would indicate that there's a private side issue, because there's no public side lead mains. There may be service lines, but it's generally a private side issue when we pick up lead. There's lead somewhere, it's an older house or whatever. And the same with nickel, you can have nickel fittings and whatever, as opposed to, it's not in the actual supply that leaves the plant, if that makes sense. So while it's private side, what we're actually checking for is that the water is, now it could be for other reasons. It could be that the water was left sitting in the pipes for quite a long time. But what they're basically saying is if we've got a low pH, it's escalating, it's making the water that bit more corrosive, and it's escalating the risk of there being copper or nickel in that supply. So any household, so that's why it's considered high risk. So any household that might have nickel or lead fittings in their houses have potential to have copper, nickel or lead exceedances. Depending on if they've got those fittings in their houses, if that makes sense. But so really, what we would have done in the past was, if we picked up copper, nickel and lead in any of the supplies, say any of the low risk supplies, then they were escalated to high risk. So there wasn't another sample taken. The only other sample that might be taken there would be part of audit monitoring, and that might only be twice a year. Because copper, nickel or lead wouldn't be, when I say audit, Group B samples, they're kind of called Group B or audit. The copper, nickel or lead wouldn't be included in the Group A or the check samples. Okay. So that's kind of the stance we took in the past. So like, we can kind of go back to her and say that it remains as high risk, but like, there could be a potential case for continuing to monitor those. Like, because you could literally take 100 more samples and never hit on a private property that has copper, nickel or lead fittings, and never get another non-compliance. You know what I mean? But what that has indicated is that the low pH has the potential to impact the copper, nickel or lead in a property. Yeah. But so that means, like, we obviously don't know how many properties would have copper, nickel or lead fittings. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we'll probably have to go back to her. We'll have to probably go back to ages ago, like early days responses, just to look at exactly what we did say to her, and we'll just reiterate that. And we can even refer to previous correspondence. I think the correspondence were actually should be saved in that file, on the well. The older correspondence should be there, but I'd have to look back myself anyway, just to see exactly what we had said. But I know there would have been an instruction, say, to the analysts to make sure that the local authorities were adding the copper, nickel and lead to all low risk supplies. So I think we'll stick with the stance of going back to Regina and saying that that we're not, like, once something is escalated to high risk, we don't continue to monitor for copper, nickel and lead. The reason that we're doing that monitoring is to indicate whether it should be in the high risk or the low risk category. And if we pick it up, then it goes into high risk. So we don't continue monitoring those supplies after that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the lead. There's a national, and there was meant to be a copper and nickel. The way there's the lead, the agreement for lead nationally with the HSE and the EPA, that we don't take follow-up samples. We don't take. We used to take in the past, like going back years ago, if we got a lead exceedance, we'd be taking samples, follow-up samples at that property, at neighbouring properties, and sometimes it was extended to a whole estate, the do not consume notice. But now there's a different procedure in that a letter is issued advising the customer that they have, that they have an issue, a localised issue, and that they need to get a plumber in to see if they've got copper, nickel and lead in the private side. But there was meant to be some kind of a protocol drafted up for copper and nickel as well. It was never finalised, but it would be on the same lines, So I think we'd best to stick with that, and just say that the reason we do the copper, nickel and lead monitoring is to indicate whether something should fit into the high risk category as opposed to the low risk.
Okay.
So look, there will be an older wording. I'll have to have a look at it there, but there is a wording there that we could, that we can use, that we used previously, basically.
I see. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. A long-winded way of saying that we only monitor copper, nickel and lead on the low-risk supplies, but you would have to go back to the analysts to ask them to confirm that is being undertaken.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. So for each local authority, for each county.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. So what was the second question then? She might have an issue with it. She might come back and say, no, you should be monitoring, carried out more monitoring for. But there is no point in it. We've already identified that it's high risk, and it's a bit like the lead. We don't go looking for it. We know it's there. We don't go looking for it.
Yeah.
So that's the first question. So for the second one, for all high and low risk supplies, confirm the time frame for completion of the remedial action program. Okay, well look, that's the standard. We're obviously looking for that all of the time. So she literally wants a confirmed time frame. She doesn't want to see TBC. She wants to know exactly when it's going to be done. Undertake the monitoring required to close out files where works have been completed. So I suppose early days, we need to, a couple of things you can circulate this to all of the analysts first of all, right? But number one, you want to ask them, can they confirm that all low risk supplies are being monitored for copper, nickel and lead? The time frames for completion will be going internally to asset planning and IDD, obviously.
Yeah.
But for the analysts, it will be the first one asking, or the link to the first one are confirming. So I would put that in the body of an email, confirm that all low risk supplies are being monitored for copper, nickel and lead, but being logged as operational sampling. For number 3, you could remind them to ask, the labs that, for each county that monitoring is being undertaken to close out the files, where the works have been completed. Because sometimes they're just, the works are completed and there's no monitoring undertaken, so just to make sure that is done. As soon as they know that the date the works are completed, that they make sure that monitoring piece is completed so that it can be removed.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then 4, in order to better track progress on addressing sites with pH issues nationally, each hearing requested report in each update the total number of supplies that have been removed and added from the national pH file since it was established in 2018, as well as the numbers added or removed since the last update submitted by Q4 2023. So you always kind of add in how many have been added or removed since Q4 2023. So now they're also asking for an update on the numbers since 2018. I think that's fairly explanatory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is sure to continue to remove any supplies from the national pH file with compliant pH results over the last 2 years, with at least 10 consecutive compliance samples taken in that time. So, in a way, okay, we have removed high risk supplies where there haven't been any pH non-compliances in the last 2 years. So you could equally, I suppose, use the argument that if we didn't have any, metal non-compliances, but you'd need to know how many metals were tested for in the last 10. It wouldn't be 2 years because you'd have a very limited number of tests, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I suppose, look, we'll leave it at that for the moment, but in theory, we could be probably making a case for a supply that hasn't had any follow-up, copper, nickel or lead exceedances. The only things for that is that we would have to be including that monitoring the high risk, supplies, which we don't. We just include them on the low risk. So as I said, we'll go back with that, saying we only do the low risk. She might have an issue with it, but if I can find a previous correspondence, I can refer back to it, refer back to whatever correspondence, in 2018, where we confirmed that we would only be monitoring low risk supplies to confirm whether or not they were at high risk, that the properties were at high risk of copper, nickel, lead exceedances, metal exceedances linked to the low pH, because not all low pH supplies are going to be corrosive. But so it's that test. It's just to test to see whether they are or not. So I think the last one, you can answer that yourself from the spreadsheet. And so number 1 and 3, it's to send an email to each of the analysts now, asking that this be done up front, confirmed up front, so that when we're going back, at the end of Q2, that we're confirming that this monitoring is being undertaken.
Yeah.
And hopefully by Q2 then, that if there are any files. Now, it might be worth also pulling out a list of files that have indicated as being works completed, so that, by county, so that they can see without having to go into the file, without the analyst having to go in and look at the, the spreadsheet. If you could list, you can send it by analyst or whatever way you want to do it, but if you kind of list all the supplies that have been indicated as having been completed, so therefore monitoring should be being undertaken to confirm that works, that the works are satisfactory, that they've addressed the issue. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So 1 and 3 are going to the analysts. 4 you can address yourself, and 2 is the one that we have the biggest difficulty with, is getting that information on timeframes for completion. So we might have a further maybe chat about that one, but I would say that we will pull out. Now, she didn't ask the question about the criteria used to pick which slides to She didn't ask those questions. While she raised the 2 questions in the meeting, about criteria used to pick sites for upgrade and how we measure success of the disinfection program. Now, measuring success of the disinfection program is probably going to come in under the disinfection program update, if she's going to ask that question. And actually, it would be also the same criteria used to pick sites for upgrade. I wonder, has that been asked as part of the the disinfection program? All right, disinfection and pH program. It's probably going to be a question under that as opposed to the national pH file.
Yeah. Actually,
I don't know if we've had a response back from her on the disinfection program and pH program.
No, we don't yet.
Yes. Okay. So it'll be interesting to see if she asked those 2 questions as part of that, because I think they're more appropriate there.
That she just combined the request for the disinfection program and pH program here for this slide, I think.
Would you mind making that a small bit bigger, just so I can see it? Sorry now. Yeah, as I said, I missed all of this, and unfortunately I had to step out for a meeting. When we were at the meeting, I had to step out for another call, and this would have been the most important bit of it, which was a bit of a bummer, really. But anyway, so UE should continue to submit updates on National Disinfection and pH program to EPA every 6 months going forward in 2024. The reason that she's combining that request, it's not the national pH file is going to be dealt with separately, but the disinfection program also includes the pH upgrades. So that's, you probably know that, but that's why she's kind of combining it there. It's a separate. But saying that, and we'd always used to wait until the disinfection program was issued, because the disinfection program, our national update for the pH file shouldn't contradict what's in the disinfection and pH program reporting. So they should coincide. So if they say a supply is going to be completed by end Q4, both responses should say the same. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We normally wait for the disinfection and pH program report to be done first, because it should coordinate with the national pH file.
Yeah.
So, but going back then so that's kind of like, I think that question about the, how they decide which ones to pick, and, how they measure, the success of the program, I think that is going to be under this. She has it there again, the criteria used for sites for upgrade metrics. So what has she under the pH national file then? Sorry. Does she have that under the pH national file as well?
Yeah. I think.
All right. Okay. So she had the 2 together. I get you. Sorry. I thought there was another slide, as I didn't get a chance to look at it. I thought there was a separate slide on the pH program. Oh, she has the 2 together. Right.
Yeah.
So in the next Q2 2024 disinfection report, okay, so that's the disinfection update. In the next UE pH file update, you include total number of supplies removed. Okay, so that's fine. So we'll forget about that, and we'll only go with what she's asked in the request.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we've dealt with 1, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a bit of work to, obviously to get that query out. You could attach the request from her, when you're sending out the queries to the various analysts.
Yeah.
But it'll nearly need to go to, maybe you can go by analyst probably, because not like some regions don't have any supplies. And I think the Northwest don't have any, for example, supplies in the pH file. Some of the regions don't have any, so it might be best going by county and asking, maybe listing out the supplies that are considered low risk and confirming that they're being monitored for copper, nickel and lead as part of the check monitoring. And for number 3, listing out supplies that have been indicated as being completed and asking, can the monitoring, to ensure that the monitoring is being undertaken as required to, it's usually 3 compliant samples, consecutive samples and consultation with the HSE to confirm that it's okay to lift. Okay. So they have that bit. 4 you can do, and then 2 is the one that's been getting us, I suppose, how do we get this information? So time frames for completion. So I would say number 1 for that, we definitely have to have any meetings that we're having with asset planning or IDD, that we have them before the end of June, so that our close-off date for getting that information is the end of June. Yeah. And even if we have to say that we're getting the information in by that date, to everybody, that's our absolute cut-off, because otherwise we're going to, so I think we just have more or less the response prepared immediately after the end of June. Yeah. Now, so that it's prepared and ready to go. And if we do happen to get some further information from somebody, it can be just amended. But we, in effect, like literally the week after, we have the meetings up until the end of June, and then the week after, by the 7th, that you have it kind of drafted. Yeah, yeah. That the response drafted, and Yeah, and actually, even I'm just trying to think. I'd nearly even go before that. I'd nearly go a week. Now I know the end of June is a busy time for you as well, for other reasons, and for ourselves and for all the analysts. But I'd nearly go with what's the calendar there? The week before the. I'd be looking at it from the middle of June to the end, like say to the week before kind of thing. Yeah, so between 14th. The 15th and the 22nd, is it? Sorry, the 14th and the 21st. Yeah, I think I'd be having the meetings then, or even I'm just wondering, should we be having them before that? The week of the 14th, the week of the 10th to the 14th, and saying that we need the information by the 30th. Okay. So we're giving them enough time. Now it probably would be worth sending out some kind of a communication around now. Yeah. To say, look, this is the information that's come back, and concerns have been raised about, in a recent meeting about anywhere there's a TBC.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say we may have the meeting in maybe the week 2 of June, and then we gather the data until the end of June, and then we have the draft in the first week of July and send out in before the 12th of July.
And the reason I was saying actually to try and have the information gathered by the week before, so we really need to have it by the 29th, say, right? It's a Friday the 29th, because we're only making, it's only putting you and particularly you under pressure by the date that it needs to go back. So I would say that we need to have the information gathered by the 28th, right? Yeah. So I think we need to look for it at least 2 weeks before that. Yeah. At least 2 weeks. So, so the week of the 14th, I would say earlier the week of the 14th, to have the meeting and say, we need this information in 3 weeks' time. We'll be giving them 2.5 weeks to get the information in. We're saying it's an absolute cut-off date of the 28th that we need this information by. We don't want to see any TBCs, and extended dates are also being queried, that basically we're giving them that 2 weeks to get it back. And then the week from the 28th, even the 28th is actually, sorry, again, I'm even contradicting myself, even the 28th is a bit late, because what I was going to say was, let's just say we go back another little bit there, and we say we want the information by the 21st and go back to the week ending. Would it be, can you go back another little bit in the calendar there? So that would be the Friday the 7th or whatever. So if we had the meeting the week from the 3rd to the 7th, right, around the 7th, right, or any time around that week, and we said we wanted the information back by the 21st so that we could compile the response to the EPA, because we're not doing ourselves any favors otherwise. Yeah. And then the week of the 21st to the 28th, you're compiling the report. Yeah. And on the 28th, we if there's any that are TBC that we don't have dates for, I'll send an email, or you can send an email, whichever, escalating it to everybody to let them know that the EPA has raised this as an issue in a previous meeting, that they don't want to see TBCs they're concerned about dates out to 2027 and the following supplies are falling into this category. Is there anything that can be done from but I think we need to be identifying that now. We need to be telling IDD and asset planning now that this is what we're going to do, that we're going to have a meeting that week. We need the information in by the 21st, and that anything that doesn't have a date on it will be escalated within the business, because it's been raised at a national meeting with the EPA that this isn't acceptable, that TVCs aren't acceptable. So the bottom line is that when we're going back on the 21st, when we get all of our information on the 21st, we need to have dates for everything.
Yeah.
So I think we might have, you have enough to be going on with there at the moment, but we're, to give everybody, in other words, we don't want anybody in IDD or asset planning and, saying, oh, we didn't know this. So we want to tell them well up in advance in any meetings and any workshops that they're having, that they need to consider that the EPA has raised this. Now I don't have time this moment to kind of properly word that, but we do need to send something. And we had we got a lot of contacts there. Now I know that meeting with asset planning, where the two people in asset planning was worth having, but they didn't have the answers.
No.
They were going to IDD to get the information.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense instead of us being second hand. And what was happening was we were sitting in a meeting and they were reading out what they had gotten from IDD, when in fact they should have actually had it in. Like if they'd gotten the information, they should have had it actually in on the tracker or sent on to you to have in on the tracker before the meeting, not sort of like going through it in the meeting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if it's in before the meeting, we can kind of look at it and see, so that we're not wasting time in the meeting going through every single PH file. We can review it in advance and say, look, what have we got here? What have we, as in where have we not got information? We'll be relying on them to let us know that anything that we have on it is accurate.
Yep.
And we'll be circulating it saying this is what we're sending back. So we're assuming that anything that's with asset planning, anything with IDD, is correct and up to date, and if it isn't, to let us know, and then that they come back to you and you update the tracker. And then so that before we have the meeting, we're literally going through the ones that we know that we have issues with, as opposed to, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
5 minutes left of the meeting there, but so look, does that make sense? Well, actually, I don't think it doesn't matter on this. Sure, it doesn't. It's more Zoom. You can get kicked off, but so basically. So you're okay for 1 and 3. You're okay for 4. But 2 is our biggest one. So 1 and 3, there's a bit of work for you to get that out to the atlas, right? Yeah. And kind of list the ones that need, the monitoring, and for whether it's the low risk copper, nickel, and lead, or the high risk, to confirm compliance. Or sorry, number 3, the not high risk, but the ones to be closed out. So that goes to the analysts. 4 is fine, and then 2, we need to come up with some kind of a wording to go out to, and I would include everybody. All the names that we were given, I might even go so far as to say that we put a name against the responsibility rather than putting in asset planning, because the way we'd be going through a PH supply and they'd say, oh, that's with Neil, or that's with Ivan Corcoran or whoever. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. We should literally have that name in so that people can go in and if they want to go in and look at the tracker, that they literally search out their name and they see exactly what files that we need them to update.
Yeah, I got you.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So so you could literally have it. You could actually have it selected and circulate to them and say, look, your name is down against these. Would you mind confirming that the updates are correct? And are amending, or sending back to me to amend. Do you know what I mean? Now, it might be that they're sending you back an email with the amendments on it and you have to insert it into the master copy kind of thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it's one way of getting it. And I'd even start that collection process before the meeting of the 7th.
I got you.
So now we can send out what we're proposing to do and the timelines of how when we're going to do it. That we'll be requesting them, that we're going to organise a meeting for, say, Thursday the 6th, of June. Yeah. That we'll be sending out a reminder 2 weeks before. We'll be sending out a request 2 weeks beforehand for updates, for the most, recent updates. Now, so look, now obviously there may be some changes towards the end of the month if they have workshops for the disinfection programme, but that's up to them to let us know if that is the case, you know what I mean, and we can kind of call that out in the meeting. But I think 2 weeks before the meeting of the 6th, we'll be writing out to them saying, these are the supplies that are against your name. Would you mind confirming that, and some of them might come back and say, oh no, this is with whoever. And if that's the case, then we resend, say Ivan Corcoran comes back and says, oh no, that's with Ian O'Neill. Well, then you have to send another one to Ian O'Neill saying there's an additional supply added to your list, further to, information provided by Ivan Corcoran. There's another name that appears to be with you, and we've added the attached list, and give them 2 weeks to get the information back to you. Have it in before the meeting, so that in the meeting we're looking at kind of what do we not have, what isn't sufficient, and then if there's any further information, that we're giving them 2 weeks back to the 21st, or any changes to come back.
Yeah.
And then we issue the report to them and circulate what we're intending to send back by the 28th. And if there's anything that we need to escalate or highlight, we'll escalate it at that stage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're kind of planning it in advance rather than sort of like having a meeting on the 21st, kind of like saying we need this by next week, and, going through every single file. Like, it was a complete waste of time, I think. It was a very long meeting for everybody, including more importantly yourself, because you had different, you know what I mean? But and trying to go through 91 supplies is just not a useful, use of time. But saying that, we did find out who the relevant people were for each file. So if you still have that information from the last updates, now there's a bit of work in it, so, take your time to sort of like go through who did you ask for the various pieces of information, or who, if you could remember who was in against each supply. But we can make a first stab at it, and some people will come back and say, no, that's with whoever, it's not with me, it's or whatever. But we'll get it right, and we'll start putting those names in, so that, that we can actually, so somebody can actually go in and look at the Excel and pull out their own name.
Yep.
Because it's no longer just okay to put in IDD, because you could have a number of different people in IDD, because you've got different people in each region.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that might be a starting point anyway. So, So, I mean, I think get one and three off the ground, and we can kind of look at the wording for 2.
Yeah.
And set out kind of, and we can maybe have another quick meeting ourselves just to set out what we're actually asking for number 2, and letting them know what we're planning on doing, so that we're not there last minute trying to get the information, and that they can expect something like, say, at the end of May, looking for information on an update for each file, because there's too many to be leaving it to the end, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
And it'll take the pressure off all around, I think. Hopefully. We say that now, but hopefully. Okay?
Sorry, Tira, can I ask the internal meeting for the Q1? Is it maybe in March or April as well?
What was that, sorry?
Because we have the internal meeting for the Q1 as well.
We generally have a meeting with IDD midway through.
As a planning, as a planning for the Q1 update. The Q1 update for the internal meeting of the BH.
But we don't send that to the EPA.
No, we don't. We just have the internal meeting only. Yeah.
Yeah. So who is the internal meeting with?
And just me and the 2 guys in asset planning.
Yeah. Well, you see, I think we want to move away from that. Is that the one that the 2 guys from asset planning, myself and yourself, were on the last time? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, I want to try and move away from that altogether. But you're right, though. We should have a meeting at the end of this quarter just to see, and maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe it's the end of this quarter that we'll set out that we're going to, we still need to. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I was kind of planning it for kind of the end of what I was planning on doing was like letting them know where we stand right now, and then kind of saying that we'll be looking for the information at the end of May. But it might be no harm. But like, the only thing is, again, we're back to nearly too many people. I'd actually be doing the same thing nearly for the mid-year, getting that request out for updates. But like, in a way, it's the problem with that is we can get the updates for the quarter, right? But the problem is, like, it could be completely different.
Yeah, for the next quarter. Yeah,
I'd organise a meeting. Just trying to think, like, because we're putting people to a lot of trouble to provide updates.
Yes, I think so. Yeah,
completely different at the end of the month. At the end of the
next quarter.
That we need to submit it. So we could be asking for updates by the end of March. that mean nothing when it comes to the end of
Exactly.
June.
Yeah.
So I think we should focus on
The
setting
Q2
out what
meeting.
we need.
Yeah.
And then maybe having a meeting at the end of March to set out what we need, as opposed to asking them for updates.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, so I think like we'll revise the wording of what we want to go out, of what we want to send out to everybody. We'll organise a meeting sometime in March to tell them how we plan to, you know, like that there will be an update every 6 months, that this is what we're planning to do. This is the way we're planning it, and even ask them, have they any better way of doing it? But that we have to find a way that, to get this information in. Now, the question is, like, there are too many people to have, in a way, there's nearly too many people to have on a call, if you know what I mean. So we might have to divide it. What we could do is divide it by region,
Okay.
you know, because you've got different, we'll have a think about that piece actually, but you know, so like say for example, if I'm doing the RAL meetings in the southwest, what I do is I hold one RAL meeting and I set out the times for discussing
3-4 hours.
Or you know, Cork City, Clare, you know, whatever. So we could do something like that. We could organise a meeting and say from, you know, 2 to 3 we're discussing northwest, you know, supplies in the northwest, or whatever, you know, 3 to 4 we're discussing supplies in whatever, because you have different people, so you're not wasting people's time. You might have the two from asset planning on the whole thing if they're interested, you know, on the whole meeting, because some decisions might rest with them, but you would only have the person in IDD, the relevant person, dropping in for their slot. Do you know what I mean? Something like that, maybe. We'll have a think about that one. We'll have a think about 3, but I think as a starting point, we'll be sending out an email saying this is what we propose to do. You know, to get to, you know, to reduce the, you know, to sort of like minimise everybody's time input, that we want to target the correct people to provide the updates, and that rather than providing or getting updates in at the end of March when they're going to be completely different, maybe at the end of June, that will be, we might organise a meeting to see the best way and let them know, you know, when we're intending to have a meeting that suits everybody or whatever. Look, I don't know, we'll have a think about it, you know, but I don't want to waste people's time, you know, so it might be that if we were going to have a meeting like that, it would be more from the point of view of getting their input into what's the best way to do it. Okay?
Absolutely,
So, so look, we'll come back to number 2, but we'll have to have a think about a wording, you know, for, you know, what we want to say, you know what I mean. But I think it will be really asking everybody in advance to update their piece, and that we have the relevant people. I think in March actually what we'll be doing is making sure that we have the relevant people for reply. It might have to be the meeting in March actually to identify.
Optimize the meeting.
In fairness, as the planning seem to know who it's gone to, you know, where the programme has gone to from as the planning. So it might be that we have a meeting with those 2 people to say, you know, look, these are the people that we were identified the last time as being the person that we should contact in relation to the supply. Do you mind if we kind of go through it and say this is what we're going to do, if you have any input or whatever, you know. But I think we'll be doing something like that anyway. All right. So we'll be starting off for number 2 with an email out to everybody, and we'll try and get it out maybe towards the end of this month at some stage. Okay, so look, we'll have another maybe chat at some stage just to see how we'll word that.
Maybe,
Are you okay for 1 and 3?
I am.
1 and 3 to get that update out to the analysts.
I am, yes.
For the request. Okay, perfect. No, that's very good. I think that we've kind of got an approach there for getting the dates by which we're getting the relevant people to put it in. We're meeting to kind of like say, look, we need it by a certain date, and if we don't have it by the certain date, then we escalate it. And we let everybody know that we will be escalating it. You know what I mean? That's the approach we're taking, you know, because we're sort of like in between, you know, the EPA and getting that information. But they need to know exactly what we want by when we need it. And, you know, that if we're not getting it, that we're going to have to escalate it. So it's up to them to make sure, I suppose, that it doesn't get to that stage, that they escalate it themselves, and you know, that if we are escalating it, that everything else has been exhausted, you know, and that the business is aware that, you know, there is a potential risk, you know, with the EPA of not going back with the correct response, you know, or the correct dates and whatever.
I got you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I think that's it. Is that all right? So is that kind of like, yeah. Very good. And look, I think we didn't actually go to look at the Excel, but I think, like, say, all of the supplies that have been removed or added since 2018 should be actually on. You know, I'm not sure. Is there an added date on it? Actually, is there? Is there a date that's added?
We have that column.
I know there's definitely a date that it was closed. You know, but So look, that's straightforward enough. It's just filtering out. You know, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.